My education. I didn't know what to study at Ricks College, so I registered for the most popular course on campus, elementary education. Maybe I just thought it was the most popular. A close second was marriage and family, maybe. Smile. I began taking the college basics and added a few educational classes here and there. I took music for elementary education, where we played the piano, learned the flutophone, and picked up a ukulele. I also took a beginning strings class trying to pick up where I'd left off several years before with the violin. I tried out for a service organization, the Valkyries, excuse me, along with my roommate. It was very hard on me. It was very hard on me when I made the cut and she didn't. It was awkward and I felt embarrassed for her. Valkyries kept me busy with service projects throughout the 2 years I was at Rick's. I made good friends and thoroughly enjoyed it. And here's Mom looking beautiful, Rick's College, 67 through 69. I was a baton twirler for the band and marched in parades and at football games. One of the classes I took my second year was a micro teaching class. We had to prepare mini lessons for some of the elementary classes in my town. My instructor was Sister Hess. She was part of the first husband-wife team who both had doctorates. Hers was in education. She had 2 young children in the local schools. The lesson plan I prepared needed to be presented to the small classroom and was videoed so Sister Hess could review it later. After she saw mine, she took me aside to tell me what a wonderful job I had done and that I hope you're teaching when my kids are in school. I was so surprised, but have never forgotten the very special compliment. Thing is, just the day before I decided I didn't want to study elementary ed, it was the pits. I disliked teaching that mini class so badly that I didn't want to continue in that career line. After I'd been a member of the church for a year, I decided to receive my patriarchal blessing. The patriarch for Rick's College was Brother H. Lester Peterson. He was the mission president of the Cumorah Mission when the missionaries first started teaching my family. It meant a lot to him to give me my blessing. And here's a picture of Hiram Lester Peterson, 1901 to 1976. Sorry, 1979. Cumorah Mission President and Rick's College Patriarch. The one thing that was said in my blessing that stood out to me was, in due time, the spirit of Elijah will touch you and you will have the desire to gather your genealogy. When this time comes in your life, be diligent in accepting the assignment and work at it with vigor. I encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to register for a genealogical class in the religious department. For here you will learn the fundamentals of research and it will be a great benefit to you when you commence gathering your own genealogy. I bless you with success in this activity and promise you that you will have it. I took the blessing to heart. The very next semester I enrolled in a basic genealogy class taught by Val Greenwood, a big name in the family history world. Of course, I can't do anything halfway, so when I went back to college, BYU, when I was 51 years old, I majored in family history. I spent time over the next 8 years studying my heart out. I still had my advanced math and my advanced language classes to take, besides all the family history classes. I chose to study business communications for my advanced language, and what a blessing that has been to me. I use what I learned in that class weekly, if not daily, in my work with Brad. But what to do about advanced math? Although my math grades in high school were excellent, when I took the algebra course as one of my basics when I was in my 50s, I was looking at a foreign language. I don't know if it was my age or the difference in taking a college math course, but I struggled to get an A in that class. I spent hours every day doing algebra homework, and that was the only class I took at the time. No wonder it took me 8 years to finish the last 2 years of my degree. Back to my dilemma, what to do about advanced math. I was advised by my son-in-law, Matt Polson, that statistics was a good choice, so I enrolled in a statistics class. Oh my goodness, I fought my way through the class with all of its memorization of formulas. And when it was time for the final, if I had been content with a C grade, I would have had a much easier time. But I had this thing in my head that all my grades had to be A. How in the world was I going to get an A on the final? I came up with a system that worked so well for me. I studied like crazy, as I always did, memorizing everything I could. Memorizing isn't my forte. Since in my early 30s, I was exposed once to a high level of carbon monoxide that caused my memory to have issues. I did what I could, though, and on the day of the exam, I fasted and prayed as I studied one last time. Then I went to the temple. Following the temple, I took my test. I breezed right through the exam. I knew every formula, understood every question, and clearly answered them. And I got an A. How in the world was I going to get an A on the final? I went out of the world to get that A. An interesting note is that day after the test, I couldn't recall anything I studied. And to this day, statistics is a mystery to me. One of my advanced family history classes was taught on the campus of BYU by Professor Corey Meyerink. And here's the BYU logo. He was quite notable in family history circles, and he strove to advance the profession by his students entering the workforce, either setting up their own businesses or getting employed by a major family history firm. In one class, he went around the room and asked how each of us planned on using our degrees. When he came to me, I didn't give the answer he wanted or expected. I said I didn't plan to work for money, but that I was learning this to give service in the church. Oh boy, he wasn't happy at all, and I got the brunt of his displeasure. He wouldn't call on me in class anymore, and when the course grades were given, he gave me an A-. I confronted him about the grade because I had done all A work. He gave me a flimsy excuse that I should have done extra credit if I wanted an A. I had never heard of that requirement. I did everything the course required to get an A, but he threw in the extra credit requirement to let me know my family history goals were not his family history goals. After the last year of school, I was called to be the director at the 5 Stake Family History Center located in our Stake Center. I spent a few hours a week there and conducted monthly staff meetings. For the most part, I didn't know what I was doing, but enjoyed myself just the same. It seems I'm always called to do something I feel fully unqualified for, and just because I was studying family history for my degree didn't mean that I could be a leader. I've always preferred being an Indian over being the chief. After a year after I graduated, the family history centers were closed in this part of the valley. In the Riverton office building, the church used a portion of the main floor for the Riverton Family Search Library, now the Riverton Family Search Center. About a month after it opened, I submitted papers to serve there as a service missionary, working about 8 hours a week. Shortly, I was invited to be part of the training team. A year later, when the church began indexing Italian civil records, the administration of the library found out that Brad had spent 3 years in Italy and asked him to come on as a service missionary and be involved with the church in the Italian indexing project. After a year of that, we were called into the director's office and asked to take over as the directors of the library. Usually when something like that happens, a person gets a tender, warm feeling in their heart. But as I sat there, it was as though someone opened the top of my head and poured ice water in throughout my whole body. I was scared to death. Remember that Indian chief thing? My 8 hours a week increased to about 30 to 40 hours a week as a part of the training team, mostly done at home and as I was preparing lessons. Now my 40 to 60 hours a week were at the Riverton office building. This was a new experience for me, being out of the home consistently, day after day, week after week. Brad was still employed, so he tried coming in at least one day a week and did his fluid power work from the office. He was also so good about conducting the monthly staff meetings and once a month Saturday seminar and the weekly administration meetings. When he couldn't be at the weekly meetings because he was out of town, I froze. That was so hard for me. It must have had something to do with the ice water that was poured into my open head. After 7 years, 5 years as directors, we were released to go back to our stake. Oh, the relief from that release. I made so many longtime friends at the library, all people I still see as I serve in the temple and as ordinance workers. Brad was called to the High Council and has had the assignment over family history. I was called a stake, temple, and family history consultant. I report to Brad. It's been 6 years now, and currently we're both still there as of 2023. Because I believe in being a lifelong learner, I have continued to study in areas I'm interested in. I've studied and learned so much more in my family history field because shortly after I graduated, Family Search began taking a whole new approach to family history. I've taken and taught many classes on research and methods and have taken advanced courses through the Utah Genealogical Association. For years, I've had a mediocre garden, and so with some encouragement from Erica, I studied master gardening through Utah State Extension. I became a master gardener 2 years ago. Just to be clear about my gardening knowledge, becoming a master gardener means I know where to go to get the information I need. It does not mean I personally have all the answers. The following year, I took a square foot gardening course and can now boast to be an overbearing I can now boast of an overbearing garden. Finally, I built 2 4-foot by 8-foot beds and supplemented with 4 used tires. I get a lot more food than we can possibly eat. I'm also learning a lot about chickens and raising them from my own incubated eggs, fertilized by my own rooster, Romeo. They are a delight, and I know if I have more space, I'd raise 100 of them just for fun. And I even built their chicken coop, Smile. What can I learn next year? And here's a picture of Mom, BYU 2008, 59 years old. Congratulations, Mom. That's awesome.